My name is Danielle Graham, and today I brought treasures from the Boer War, from my great-grandmother's brother. I brought in a custom-made box that holds his Boer War medals, a clip of .303 rounds, and a box of 120-year-old chocolate.
Africa has a sad and violent history of European imperialism. The Dutch East India Company began sending settlers in the mid-1600s to what is now South Africa to exploit its abundant natural resources. By the mid-1800s, the colonies were under the control of the British Empire, except for two independent states controlled by the Boers, who were the descendants of the early Dutch settlers. At the turn of the 20th century, the discovery of rich deposits of gold and diamonds sparked a 3-year conflict between the British and the Boers, known as the Boer War. More than 7,000 Canadians fought for Britain. It was Canada's first, and perhaps least respected, foreign war.
So Danielle, you've brought us in some artifacts. What can you tell us about these artifacts?
Well, this is a presentation case that was created for the medals, a clip of .303 rounds, and a box of 120-year-old chocolate that belonged to my great-grandmother's brother, Arthur Wheeler. She had the presentation case made, and they've been passed down through the family, eventually to me.
Well, it's a very nice grouping of medals. The first one right here is the Queen Sudan medal that was issued for the reconquest of Sudan in the 1890s. This was the Khedive's Sudan medal. And also I see here that you have the original Queen Victoria chocolate box that was given to every member of the armed forces serving in the Boer War. So if I open it up, we can see it still has the original chocolate in there. Often you'll find the box but not the chocolate, and the chocolate just makes it that much more interesting for collectors. What's very interesting is that you've kept it in the same family. It's part of the family lore.
It is,
very
very
nice.
much so. All my life I'd known about the chocolate, but it wasn't until my grandfather was moving and he passed on to me the chocolate, but also the presentation box with the medals and the clip of rounds. And I didn't know that existed.
So Danielle, do you know much about your relative?
I know he joined the military in something like 1896-97. He joined very young and died very young.
Your relative served in the Army Service Corps, so this man would have been involved in supply the troops. That wasn't an easy job, especially in that time with the logistics of the time. Without seeing the service file, I can tell you that he served in this campaign. That was a reconquest of the Sudan area.
Can I just ask you what the Sudan conflict was about?
In the 19th century, most European powers were trying to create colonies in Africa. The attempt to take the Sudan and to control that region was imperial expansion, to grab as much as Africa as they could. The first time the British were in the Sudan didn't really go very well for them. It culminated in the death of General Gordon at Khartoum, and so they started a reconquest of Sudan to control that area. I guess if we're looking at from a 21st century perspective, it was the high water mark of the British Empire, basically grabbing more territory at the expense of the little guy, but that's the way empires work. Danielle, do you know much about the Boer War?
No, not really.
The Boer War basically started in the late 19th century. It was a result of an influx of English settlers into the area. The Boers wanted nothing to do with that. They were a very independent people, and the British government got involved, escalated things to a military conflict. In the beginning, the Boers successfully defeated the British, but then the British turned to techniques such as scorched earth. They also gathered up a lot of the Boer families, women and children, put them into concentration camps, but it basically convinced the Boers to surrender. Canada participated in the Boer War. They sent over a contingent of about 7,000 troops, and really it was the first war where Canada got involved in a foreign conflict. And the Canadians did very, very well. One of the most famous battles for Canada is the Battle of Paardeberg, where the Royal Canadian Regiment attempted to attack during the day, were repulsed by the Boer sharpshooters, and eventually went in at night and were able to take the Boer encampment, and were applauded by the British for their dashing in battle. So there's an interesting story here for Canada, as well as your relative and the British Commonwealth. In the time of the Boer War, there was a large amount of patriotic fervor for the Commonwealth. For a lot of these young men that were going overseas to fight, it was the right thing to do. We look back at it now and we think it's horrible, but they wanted to go, see the world and defend the empire. So Danielle, another thing I find interesting about your group is it's a very poignant reminder of the cost of war. You know, your relative who was 23 years of age died, never got to have a family. He died of disease, which was quite a problem for the British in South Africa. Whenever you have a large body of men, diseases like that spread very, very quickly amongst troops. There was really little they can do except to ride out diseases, and many, many men succumbed to that.
I would ask my grandfather if he knew anything else about Arthur Wheeler. You know, this was his mother's brother. She would have known him. There must have been stories that I just haven't got.
I'm just curious, what are your plans for something like this?
Well, you know, I'm torn about that. It has been in my family, and a big part of me thinks that it should remain in our family. But I do remember my grandfather saying, I'd like to donate it to a museum when I'm gone. To me, it has immense value, and it's not a monetary value, but in terms of its ability to tell a story, it's invaluable. It's a part of my family, and I'm sharing something about a person who's real. I think that, you know, sometimes that can be lost.
These are very valuable things. They're a part of our history that need to be preserved. It deserves to be on a wall and be respected. I would encourage people to dig into their family history and especially their military history, and maybe discover something about their relatives that they didn't know.
The value for me is in the story, and of keeping that for so long. My family's kept this chocolate for 120 years. I will not be the person who gets rid of it. I just won't.
Danielle, thank you for bringing these medals in. As I say, I love them, and I think they're a great piece of history and tells the story of one individual's sacrifice for his country. Thank you for bringing them in.